Many of you are probably familiar with the 5 love languages test. It was actually a book back in 1992, and that might surprise some of you because it's been around for so long that this has become such a commonplace kind of discourse in our culture. It's very regular to hear somebody say something like, "Oh, well, what's your love language?" And even if you've never read the book, you might know where you fall along that scale. But essentially, the theory and the book outline 5 categories that acts of love and individuals fall into. So it's quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, and acts of service. And it's not to say that like only one of these things is your identity or anything like that. It's just to help you understand how you perceive love. What types of acts of love make you feel the most loved. And then you can communicate that to others and you avoid a lot of difficulty this way. And I think it's actually a really good test because we desire to love and to be loved. But there's this difficulty sometimes when you're trying to pour out love to somebody and they still feel unloved, or they're even getting frustrated with your acts of love. And you might think, well, man, they just don't want my love at all. And you might just quit trying. But it might just be, like this theory kind of posits, that love is a type of language. It's a type of communication. And just like people communicate differently, people receive and give love differently. And to understand how a person, perceives this can be really important in a relationship. So even though most personality tests I found really annoying because I think they box you in too much and they're trying to define who you are, this one I felt like I was trying to understand better who I am. Now, I know those of you that love personality tests are going to really get on me about this and say, well, Micah, that's what all personality tests are trying to do, just make you understand yourself or others better. I get it. I'm just saying the feel of this one to me was different because it was more exploratory of myself rather than carving out a definition. The other ones seem more like horoscopes to me, and I just don't care for it. But I really do like this one because imagine you're a husband and you're working late, you're working overtime, and you want to show your wife love. And you think, man, I've been working overtime a lot. I'm going to send her a gift home. Well, if she's a gifts person, sending her flowers might be something that really makes her feel special and loved and cared for. And she'll remember that you thought of her in this moment where you were working and you haven't forgotten about her and you put thought into the gift. This might mean a lot to her. Or taking an hour off from working overtime that night and spending time with her, knowing that she's feeling kind of lonely and isolated, might be the thing that works best. Now, if you're the person who thinks, I don't really care what her love language is, I'm going to do the thing that I think is most loving, if she doesn't receive it as love, then you're just going to be annoyed and she's going to be annoyed at you. And it just creates conflict you don't need. So understanding how a person perceives and feels the most loved is really, really important. I think it's like a cheat code for how to understand how to love somebody. And why would we not take the easy route and communicate these things to each other? Now, I do want to say and make this very clear that if you don't show love in the way that somebody ideally perceives love or feels the most loved, that could just be a lack of understanding. It doesn't mean that you're an unloving person, right? Like if I know somebody and they're a quality time person and I send them a gift, it doesn't mean that you can never send a quality time person a gift. If you're a gift giver and that's part of how you show love, it's okay to do that, okay? But if you know how they most often feel loved or how they feel the most loved and you continue to avoid that or run from that or just don't pay any attention to it or never show them that form of love, then this kind of stubbornness could be unloving. It could be a sign that you are being unloving, or it could be a sign to that person that you're trying to show love to that you're being unloving. But what's interesting is that all of this is true about God. And I think this is amazing because we can understand God in the same way that we understand people. Now, obviously, God is so much higher and greater than all people. And so it's not like a one-for-one comparison, but this can help us understand God just a little bit better when we think about trying to show love to him. And that's a difficult thing because God is, he's infinite, he's powerful, he's all loving, he's all knowing. He's just the most powerful and amazing being in the universe. And here I am, a tiny dust of a person trying to say, I want to show love to God. How should I do that? But what's amazing about this is that if I knew God's love language, wouldn't I just want to do that for him all the time? He died for my sins. He showed so much love for me just in creating me. All my life should be spent in wanting to show that service to him. Not acts of service, acts of love, but that service of love to him. And I think most people feel this way. Most well-meaning Christians struggle to show love to God, or struggle to understand how we can best show love to God. We think, man, I struggle enough with people. We need love languages tests just to figure this out. And even then, I struggle sometimes. And this is true. It can be hard to be constantly loving to people or to communicate that love effectively. And it's way harder even for God, I'd imagine, sometimes. John talks about this. He says, if you guys aren't even loving each other who you can see, how are you going to love God who you can't see? And so there's a greater degree of difficulty with loving God who isn't like physically near you. But if you could just know God's love language, wouldn't you jump at the opportunity? Wouldn't you want to know, how does he best receive love? What makes him feel the most loved? I have great news for you, because he has told us. He has shown us what his love language is. In John 14:15, it says very simply, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Now, this is not Jesus saying, do what I want, then I will love you. He is going to the cross at this moment. He is showing the ultimate love for mankind. And he's saying, I'm giving you this form of love. I'm doing this outpouring of love for you. How I receive love best is if you keep my commandments, which are also for your own good. It's Jesus saying that the end of the law is love towards God and love towards man. The purpose of the law is to show what love is. So Jesus is about to go to his death, and the disciples are confused and they're lost, and they're in this like pre-morning state of like, what's about to happen? They just know something grave and serious is going on. And he's saying, when all of this comes to pass, it's not your grief and your mourning that I want you to show me love through. It's your loyalty. This is what I want, your loyalty. And so what are the things we do that we think are showing love to God, but aren't actually what he's asked of us? I can think of several things in my own life, and especially in the wider Christian world. All these days we want to add to say, well, I'm worshiping God with this holiday. I'm worshiping God with this fancy show of music at church. Maybe you are. It's possible. There are things that God didn't explicitly ask me for, and I do believe I can be worshipful through them, but am I leaving the things he's asked of me undone? Am I doing the things that are not his love language before I'm considering what he's directly asked me to do that makes him feel loved? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we don't love him just because we're doing extra things that aren't explicitly commanded, but we definitely should start with doing the right things that he's asked of us before we do the things that he hasn't.